Hello everybody and welcome to our Internet Programming and Internet Computing class. And so far I have given you the introduction to the web. We talked about HTTP and HTML programming, and within today's class I will continue with some more advanced HTML design topics, and I will show a tutorial about how to include links and basically hyperlinks to link to other sections of our web page, and also internal pages within our website or external pages from other websites using hyperlinks. And then I'll talk about the styling of the web documents with cascading style sheets and the three different approaches to using cascading style sheets or CSS within our documents. And I will close the lecture at cascading style sheets, and next week I'll show you a quick tutorial about creating internal, external, and embedded cascading style sheets, or essentially inline, embedded, and external cascading style sheets. And then I'll show you how to use Microsoft Web Developer in next week's lecture to create cascading style sheets and importing and using server controls. So that being said, welcome to the class and enjoy the lecture. One of the first advanced topics about HTML programming is the topic of links and website navigation. And today we'll talk about them, and I'll talk about how we could create hyperlinks, which is essentially why markup languages were used in to start with, in order to create the web, or the World Wide Web. There are two fundamental types of hyperlinks. There are internal hyperlinks and external hyperlinks. You use internal hyperlinks or internal links to create links to different sections of a single page, or to link to other documents and sections within other web pages that are in your own website, or in the current website that you are developing. And the example is basically using simply your A tag, and then within the A tag to give the internal source as the hyperlink reference, or href, and then within the opening and the closing tags of the anchor tag or the A tag, you would type a sentence basically describing the action that would happen if you click on this sentence or on this link. Or you could put images and make your images essentially hyperlinks, or you could use image maps to link within the same image or different regions of the same image to other pages. The external hyperlinks are used to link to the internet websites other than your own site that you are developing, or the current site. You could use it to link to email servers. If you want to email somebody, you could use the email servers link, or you could use the link to link to FTP servers, or to various discussion forums in other Usenet groups. And here is an example of how you can link to a mail server within the href section of your anchor tag. You type in mail to and a colon, and then the email address of the person you would like to send an email. And once that is rendered on your HTML page, if you click on it, then it would use your default mail browser or mail client and put the email that is within this href section into the send part of your mail or your email document, and you just simply type in your email and you send your email away. Now, just to talk to you about the anchor tag or the A tag. A tag is essentially like other tags, and you can look it up on the w3.org website that I gave you last week. And it has different components, and basically the most important part of an anchor tag is essentially the hyperreference, or href. and it is basically a universal resource indicator that tells you where the reference is, and within that reference you can use the hash mark or the pound sign to reference to a section within that page or within that universal resource indicator to for example, to go to a page and then to go to a different section of a page if it's a long page. And we will make these things in an example in just a few minutes. And then you can use the REL, or basically the relationship between the page that you are linking to and the page that is linking to the destination page. And this is a link type, and different link types are, for example, style sheet, if this link is a style sheet file for your page, or if it's a previous link, if in a queue or a sequence of pages, if it's a next link, and so on and so forth. The other attribute is reverse, or REV attribute, and this is basically the reverse of REL, or relation. Relation tells you what is the relationship of the link that you clicked on within your document, and the REV basically is used to describe a reverse link from the anchor that you specify with your hyperreference attribute. Now let's just start an example, and I will create a website, and in that website I'll create a page that would contain information about an imaginary book, and in the page I will have 3 links at the top of the page that would link to the same page but different sections of the same page, and then I will add extra links to that page to link to other pages, and we keep adding features to this website as we go on, and I'll demonstrate how you can easily use the anchor tag to create hyperlinks and link internally and externally. So let's get started. Here I am in my Microsoft Visual Web Developer, and I would like to create a new website. So I click on New Website. I want to make sure that I'm using Visual C#, although I'm not going to be using it. I want this to be an empty website. I want to be on the on the file system, and let's call this website Advanced HTML. Now, while in the website, I need to create a new item, and that would be my home page, which is an HTML page. HTML page is down here. Click on it and rename it to Home, and then click Add. So here you have your empty website that contains all the information about your web page, and we would like to populate this website with the information that we are giving to this website about the imaginary book. Alright, so in the title page, let's make it basically say my book, and in the body page I'd like to have a central heading, so add the center tag, and then within the center tag add your heading 1, and let's call it the book. That would be the title of your book. Now let's add a break, or a line break, at the end of it. Next, I would like to type just information, basically, to this to this website. So I'd make a secondary heading, and within this secondary heading I would like to simply add the chapter names and numbers. So for that I would add a chapter 1, and then I'd like to add some spaces to it, and that would be the special character. Let's add 2 of these, blank space, and then let's add chapter 2, again 2 of these blank spaces, in blank space and blank space, and chapter 3. Let's make this one references. And let's add a return and a horizontal line to it. Now let's save our document and let's run it in the browser. So here you have it. The title page is the book. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and references are the sections that I wanted to reference. I would think of it as a table of content kind of thing. Now, I don't have any links here added. Let's add more contents to this page, and then let's come back and let's add more contents to this page, and then let's come back and see how it works. And then we add basically our hyperlinks later. So let's go and let's create a paragraph, and within the paragraph let's give it a simple title, and that would be in H3, and this would be my chapter 1 colon, and then let's add a return at the end, and let's type some information about this chapter. This is some information about chapter 1. And then let me just copy this for chapter 2 and chapter and the reference chapter. And in here, let me just add this is the link to my first reference. And I'll add several references here. Okay, now let's run the website, see how it looks like. It is asking me to save. Yes, I would like to save. And so here we are. And as you see, I didn't put the returns at the end of this, so let's go ahead and do that. To make the website look better. And here it is. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, and so forth. Let's basically add a return at the end of. Actually, let's have horizontal rules separating our chapters. How about that? And let's remove these returns at the end of these chapters. That they make it probably a little more easy to see, and there you have it. And remember, these tags are the tags that we talked about last week, and if you don't remember them, you can always access the w3.org that has information about these tags. So, as you notice here, I have created the first H1 heading, and then I centered the paragraph by using center tag, and then I added chapter 1, 2 blank spaces, that was the ampersand NBSP semicolon. That's a Unicode that the HTTP or HTML browsers would identify that as a single space. Otherwise, if I would have just put just spaces, it wouldn't basically be rendered here, as we talked about it last week. And then I added chapter 2 and references. Now I want to make this chapter 1 a link to reference, or basically to make the focus point of my web browser, this chapter 1 heading over here, and I want to make this chapter 2 a link that when I click on it, it would make the heading chapter 2 over here. Basically, it would move the website attention point over this item here. That's the heading. And the same for references. When I click on the references, I would like to move the heading, or the attention, or the focus point of the browser over the references. The reason for this is sometimes your pages are long, and they're basically in multiple pages. So users would have to, in order to navigate in your pages, they would have to scroll down and up to go from one location on one section of your page to the next. This way, you make it easier for them to click, and you create a navigation bar, that is this bar over here, and the users could simply click on wherever section they are interested in on your website or your web page and go to it. Next, I will make each of these headings essentially an internal link that would open another web page that is related to chapter 1 and chapter 2 and so on. And finally, I would make these references, each of them, I make them several internal and external links. Okay, so let's close these links. Okay, let's start making our hyperlinks. Now, as I said, the first thing I want to do is that I want to make the navigation bar links available. So I want to click on chapter 1 on the navigation bar. That is basically up here. I want to click on chapter 1, and then I want the focus point of the browser to go to chapter 1 section here. There are two steps that I would have to make. One, or the first step, is to create the URI, or the Universal Resource Indicator or identifier, the location of my destination link, and then use the anchor tag to reference it. So the first task is to create a name for chapter 1 heading up here, which is the place that I wanted to go. So all I need to do is to create an ID and call it CH1. You can name it anything, but be sure that you use correct uppercase or lower cases when you are referencing these hyperlinks and URIs because it is case sensitive. So now that I have a name for chapter 1 associated with it, then I could go in to my chapter 1 up here and create a hyperlink for it. There are two steps that I need to make. The first step is to put the anchor tag, A, opening tag, before the text up here. So that would be the anchor tag, and its edge reference would be # and CH1. That is pointing to the same document, because I don't have a name for the reference. It looks within the same document, and then it looks for the ID of CH1. And I need to put the ending tag. Now the Visual Web developer had already created the ending tag. I can either copy the ending tag or actually cut the ending tag and paste it at the end of my my link text, or I could type the link text within the closing or ending documents. So now here my chapter 1 becomes essentially my link. Now if I run this in my browser, now this is my chapter 1, and when I click link, it would bring the focus point of the web browser down to chapter 1. As you see, the link was blue, and when I clicked on it, it turned sort of purple. That's the default behavior of this the HTML codes. If you would like to make the colors different, you should basically make sure that you give a color to the green, to the links, and also a different color to the visited links. So in order to do that, let me refresh, and let's go to the body and make link equal green, vlink, that's the visited link, equal let's make it gray. Now if you run it in the browser, now the visited link had turned gray. Now let's create another link for chapter 2. Let's give an ID to this chapter and make it ch2, and then let's go up to chapter 2 and create a hyperlink. href is equal to ch2, and let me copy this chapter 2 within the text and run it in the browser. So here the unvisited links are green, and when I click on it, it makes the focus point to chapter 2, and when I go back, the visited link had turned gray. Now you might say that, well, you clicked on chapter 2 and the focus point didn't come to chapter 2, it came to chapter 1. It is actually in fact not true. The reason that it couldn't go further down is that it reached the end of the document. So it tried to make the chapter 2 topic here all the way on top, but it wasn't able to do that because it was it already reached the document. Now if I go in here and if I start making these sections bigger, you will see that when I click on chapter 2, it actually brings me down all the way down to chapter 2. Let's do the same thing for chapter 2. If I click on chapter 2, now that it couldn't reach the end of the document, it brought it even further. Now let's do a little game here, and let's create subsections for this chapter 2. So let's say that this is information about chapter 2, and then let's create an ordered list for the subsections for this chapter. So how many of you remember how you could create ordered lists? That's correct. It's with the tag OL. So you need to take this closing tag at the end of your ordered list, and then you need to assign each of these lists as a list. And then get rid of this returns because your lists don't need returns, and you need to create all those lists. I'm just copying and pasting, so nothing to really worry about it. You feel that it's a little going too fast. So this is some information about chapter 2 about, let's make it section 2-1, 2-3, 2-4, 2-5, and I'm just okay, now let's run this thing, see how it looks like. Okay, now my chapter 1 is occupying all of this document or the page. I want to see what chapter 2 is. I go to chapter 2 and it tells me that this is information about chapter 2 and this is some information about chapter section 2-1, section 2-2, section 2-3, and so forth. Let's make the same links for references, and let's create, instead of these lists like this, let's create an automatic reference list with ordered lists. And let's make this section list an ordered list, and the reference list an ordered list. And again, I'm basically getting rid of all these returns because the lists automatically create the returns. Now, if I, instead of this numbering that I have here, I simply use li and then close it, and then in the opening tag use an opening li and use another opening li and a closing li. So let's run our references and in our web page. So now chapter 2 has become an ordered list, and then lists in chapter in the references have become ordered lists. And let's make this references section also referenceable or linkable by assigning it an ID and then adding an anchor tag to the end to the references text, make it a link, and href will become the ref with the hash sign. So the hash sign identifies the ID of the location, and ref identifies the location that you want it to be linked. So run in the browser, and I'm just closing the obsolete ones. And so the references, again, it's a green link that tells me that it's not being used or visited so far. If I click on it, it would take me to the references section. And again, it reached already at the end of the page, so it can't go further than that to make references on top. So it reached it as far as it did. Now here I linked within my own web page. How about if I want to link externally? Now, in order to make it externally, actually internally, but how about if I want to link to a different web page within my website? Let's say that I have now the table of content of the book, that is the navigation bar on top here, and I click on each section and it takes me to the appropriate location for that page. Before I answer that question, let me just make this page a little more uniform looking by just making this chapter also, or basically using my unordered lists, and then using the list tag, I'm double clicking on the entire word and it changes the entire word to, actually selects the entire word. That's a selection property. Let's add a whole bunch of other lines here just to make sure that you understand the property of this these hyperlinks. So let's run the chapter, click on chapter 1, then click on chapter 2, and then click on references, and it would take you to the reference locations. Now there are a couple of things that I want to show you and talk to you about. One is the when you click on chapter 1, it takes you to chapter 1, and you lose your table of content, and all you need to do is to browse or scroll up, go all the way to the table of content. When your pages are getting longer and longer, it becomes tedious for the users just to scroll down or up all the way to get to the point where your table of your table of contents or your navigation bar is, which is on top here. And there are two solutions for it. One would be to create and render or copy and paste the table of content within your chapter location. So whenever you're in one chapter, you will see this content appearing at the bottom of the chapter. The problem with it is that the browsers are and the screen sizes are different, so you would never know how this would be rendered on your users, your website users' screens. So the second solution to it is to create another link at the end of each chapter to basically link back to the top of your page. Now to do that, I would create for the heading of my page, which is this H1, I will create an ID, and I would call this ID home, and then I will add at the end of each of these chapters, I'll add a small hyperlink or an anchor, and I call it call its attention to the top of the page. Let's make it actually top. This way it won't get confused with the name of the page. So, and then here, and all I need to do is to create essentially this reference or this hyperlink at the end of each of my documents. And when you run it, you click on chapter 1, you see that you're directed to chapter 1 section, or that part of your web page, and when you click on this link to go back to the top of the page, you would be directed automatically to the top of the page. You click on chapter 2, you'll go to chapter 2, and now this link has been already visited, which is the top of the page. Again, references, and then you go back to the top of the page. Now my next step is to create other pages in my website, because right now my website has only a home page. It's just one page which contains the table of contents and some preliminary information about my book, right? Now what I would like to do is to create extra information about my book, and I would like to have my chapters essentially have their own web pages, and each of those web pages will have the sections of the chapters within them. It would be very easy to do, so all I need to do is just to close this links and go back to my browser and make sure that I have my file saved, and then right click on the website and then click add new item, and within your new item you want to select an HTML page, and let's call this page now CH1, or let's call it chapter 1, just not to be confused with the tag names and ideas that I used for my previous example. Click on add, and now you created another file within your home page, within your website, called chapter 1, and this will contain the information about chapter 1. Let's call this title chapter 1, and in the body of this chapter I would like to create basically information about its whatever this chapter will contain. So in the body, let's make a center tag, and within the center tag I would like to add my heading of this, and then call this ID, make it CH1 top. Chapter 1. Now let's add a horizontal rule to it, and let's run our chapter 1. Here is chapter 1. Now, I want to have different sections. Now, I want to have different sections down here. So it would have introduction, and then it would have section about something about chapter 1 and so forth. So let's say that this chapter 1 is Introduction to HTML Programming. So this will have a heading 2 with the name of ch1 intro, and it would say introduction, and it would have a within the introduction section I would just type in whatever information section of chapter 1, and just to make this a little long, I just copy and paste it. So click on it and run your section. So you see that you can go to the introduction section, right, about chapter 1. And then let's confine all this within a paragraph. And let's have a horizontal rule. So here you have your section within a paragraph, and at the end of your paragraphs for this section, you'd have you have another horizontal rule. Now let's have another paragraph for another section within this chapter. So you would add another heading, and you'd call this ID as chapter 1 basics. That's just a name that I gave this this section, and make sure that you close the names in the brackets. And then this is the basics of HTML. Let's just copy and paste a whole bunch, and at the end another horizontal row. I didn't define the okay. So here you have the chapter 1 title, and then you have introduction, and then the stuff I put for this section, and you have basics of HTML, and then the stuff that you put on this section. Now, so this is the chapter 1 page, but I was actually in home page, and if I run the home page, I want to now click and link this chapter 1 to the chapter 1.html page, so that it would bring me all the way up to chapter 1 here. Now, how could I do that? The solution is fairly simple. Wherever you have in the home page, wherever you have the title for chapter 1, and you like to make this chapter 1, which will be rendered over here in this blue, you want to make this into a link. So go ahead and in your in your home page code, find chapter 1 and make a link for it with the A tag. Now if you do this and you run your web page, of course after saving it, you'd see that this chapter 1 has not become a link. You need to create an href or hyperreference for it, and in the hyperreference you need to assign pages, which page you want to assign to it. Now, thankfully to the Visual Web Developer allows you to choose the pages that you want to internally reference, or pick an external URL. Now, I want to reference chapter 1.htm page, so click on it, and it would be added automatically to your code. And when you run your code now, after you save the changes. Now chapter 1 has become a hyperlink. And when you move your mouse over or hover over this hyperlink on the status line at the bottom of the page, you will see that it is locating the web page chapter1.html within the website advanced HTML that you created. And if you click on it, it would take you to chapter 1. Now, if you wanted to go to chapter 1 or the top of the page or the title page itself, basically just render the page from the beginning of the page, you wouldn't have to assign a new section within that web page. What about if I wanted to go to chapter 1, section 1, which is the introduction, from my referencing HTML, which is the book? So how about if I wanted to click on this line, and it would automatically not only take me to chapter 1 here, but also to actually introduction, basically at the end of this, at the beginning of this section. So that would be also fairly simple. I will create a hyperlink for this introduction section 1.1, and what I could do is that now create the reference for this link chapter 1, and then hash sign the reference or the ID of that section, which is ch1 intro. So I go to ch1 intro. So notice I added the universal link indicator with the chapter1.htm, which is the file that I'm referencing, and then hash sign, and then the section that I want to go, which is the ID of the place that I would like to go, which would be ch1 intro up here. I could do the same for ch2, which would take me automatically to section 2 of chapter 1. So add it, chapter 1, hash sign, ch2 basics, ch2 basics, and then close your tag. Oh, ch1 basics. And I need to make sure that my capitalization is working. And then I'll run my chapter. So again, I could click on chapter 1 within the same page. The focus point would go to chapter 1. I could click on chapter 1 and it would take me to chapter 1 page itself, and or I could click on I need to run it again, or I could click on this internal link that takes me to chapter 1, but not just to the beginning of chapter 1, but to ch1 intro section of chapter 1, which is the introduction section. And as you notice, it didn't take me all the way to the beginning of the page. It actually took me to the introduction section of the page. If I click on section 1.2, it would take me to the basics of HTML, but it already reached the end, and it just doesn't show me the end of chapter 1. Now, if I would have added another section at the end of the second section, let's call this section ch1 more, and now if you run your page and you click on chapter 2, it actually takes you to the second chapter of your second section of your page. So it didn't take you all the way to the top, it actually did take you to the basics or more basics of HTML that I created. So another when you're referencing like this, sometimes you want to be able to access your page within the same window or the same tab in your browser, or you might want to have access to a different tab. You might want to open your opened web links into in another window or another tab, just to keep the main tab open. You can do that by assigning the target of your references. So in each of the A links, anchors, you have the href, which tells you where your resource is located, and then if you don't put anything for its target, it would automatically thinks that your target is the same window. You could either use the underscore blank, it would open a new tab and place it, or you could open it in a parent target, which places your new open link in a parent link, and so on and so forth. So the title that we want to use, or here the target I want to use would be a blank tab. So if I add this target to my chapter 1 intro and I run, and if I click on my chapter 1 intro, it would click the chapter 1 introduction section of the chapter 1 page in a new tab, which is up here. Now if I click back, I still retained my opening page, and my new page that was opened and clicked, it was opened in a new tab in the browser. Okay, so let's close all this. And next I will show you how to reference external links. Now, before I talk about external linking, let me talk about absolute links versus relative links, and talk to you about the differences and with these two different types of referencing. Absolute links basically provide the exact address of the resource that you are referencing and you're looking for, and that would mean that you would create this reference with the inclusion of the host name, or basically the domain name, and the root of the web page, and all the way down to the folders that your file is located at, and then at the end of the folder. Now this is sometimes useful for external linking, but for internal linking it would get really complicated and confusing, and therefore it might make sense for you to use relative linking. In the relative links, basically what you do is that you provide the relative location of the resource you're looking for with respect to the to another location or another web page. Let's say that I am in a folder called chapter 1, and I'm in a page within that folder, and I want to reference a folder that another page within chapter 2 folder, which is one level up. And what I could do is that I could reference this the file I'm looking for with respect to the location of my current file that's open. So look at the first example. In the first example, if I wanted to reference page 1 from anywhere in the site, and page 1 was located in a front page folder, I would go ahead and reference the exact absolute location of this. Or if I want to go to yahoo.com, I provide the exact location, or a page within yahoo.com, I provide the exact location, including www.yahoo.com / the folder / the file I'm looking for. When I'm internally referencing, let's say that I'm in a folder that is at the same level as folder front page, and I want to reference page 2 from front page folder, which is a different folder from where I'm located at. I simply reference it by moving up one folder by providing the period / and then providing the front page folder, and then providing the page information. And I'll show you this kind of referencing within an example in a few seconds. So here's an example of external or absolute linking. So for the absolute linking, you would have to include all the information about your files and the locations of your resources with respect to the absolute main folder of the resource. So look at here that you start with, because home is basically in the main folder advanced HTML. If I want to address another file within another folder, say folder ch1, I would have to include the ch1 folder and then include the chapter name chapter1.htm in the referencing. So look, if you look at chapter 1 and then you click, this would take you to chapter 1. Now if from chapter 1 you wanted to reference chapter 2, you would have to create an absolute path for it. Let me show you how that works. Okay, here I'm in chapter 2, the file chapter 2, and I created an absolute reference or an absolute link to the to go to chapter 1. Now chapter 2.htm, where this chapter 2 is located in a folder called ch2. Now chapter 1 file, which I'm calling, is located in a folder called chapter 1. In order to absolutely link this chapter, we have to link from the main root of the file, which is advanced HTML, where the website is located, and then link to the absolute location of chapter 1 folder, and then the absolute location of chapter 1.htm within that folder. And when I do that, this link would work. So let's run this, and if I click on the link go to chapter 1 here, it would take me to chapter 1 by its absolute link. Now if I wanted to click on if I wanted to click to link to chapter 1 in a relative manner, I would basically use the relative location of these two folders. Because folder chapter 2 and chapter 1 are in the same level, all I need to do is to go one level up from where chapter 2 is located, then go to folder chapter 1, and then reference ch1. Now if I click on run, it would automatically determine the location of chapter 1 with respect to the location of chapter 2 file, and it would automatically link to the correct location. Okay, now that I have the two chapters and files ready, let me show you how I can use external referencing. Let's assume that this book is referencing some of my my pages, which are essentially on my my university homepage, and because my university homepage is external to this this website I'm developing, I will have to reference externally. One way to deal with this is essentially, let's assume that this the references that I'm creating here, these are references to my my classes. So what I can do, for example, is to create a link with the A tag, and then the href hyperreference would be my external link at UHV and my home page and teaching folder fall 2010 COSC 4341 default HTML. Now if that link is a correct link, when I'm running this page and I go to the references, I believe that I forgot to put the correct link to. That's why I didn't put the text, and it wouldn't show any link to COSC 4341 page. And so let's rerun this and go to references. So the first link is now linked to COSC 4341, and if I click on it, it would take me to the reference page. I believe the file name is not correct. Let's find it. Let's go to references. Let's click on it. We still have problem with it. Let me find the page for you first, and then I'll correct. The problem was a wrong keystroke. So here is the HTML, external HTML, that is our website here for internet programming or internet computing. Let me make some more external references here. To another link. And so this one, let's go to a different page, and let's run the page. And in the references, so the first page is linked to COSC 4341, which would take me to this external location, which is an absolute path. And the second link, which is linked to COSC 6341 page, 43 page, I should correct this. It would take me to the page for 6343. 6343. Now, if I run this newly linked pages, now I can click on 41, or I can click on 6343, and it would take me to the new link. Now, if I wanted all of my web links to use a base location, so I'm having all the links, I would have to type, for example, the entire link location. What I could do is that I could create a base document, and I could ask the I could create a base document, and then I could ask all the links to essentially be associated with or link all of the relative links that I create with respect to the base file. So in the head, I use the base tag, and I would call href equal http www.uhv.edu / my website / teaching. This would create my base document, and within the references, if I would want to call my fall 2010 documents, I would simply call with respect to the base. And so, as you see, all of these links are now green because all of them are now referencing from the base, which is not the right thing for me to do, because at this point now these will look at external links from my own website, which I created within the base document. So if I click on this, these links are going to be broken. So now if I click on this reference files, which are correct links to my external links, I will be able to get them. But if I click on any of the other internal links, I would not be able to locate the files, because it would not consider them internal. It would consider them from the main base hyperreference that I created. So let's make the changes, and let's take the base out. So I won't need a base, and let me just make these external links available. So and this way I will make sure that all my files are now, or all my links are now working and are in a good order. Let's test it. So if I click on chapter 1, I go to chapter 1. If I click on back to top, I go back to top. Chapter 2, back to top, chapter 1. And then this would take me to introduction part of chapter 1. References, COSC, and COSC. Now, as I showed you, I created a link to go to chapter 1 from chapter 2. Let's assume that we have a chapter 3 file also, which is in chapter 3 folder, and it basically is from okay. So here I have these 3 files, chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. And let's assume that I would like to sequentially go through these files. Now, when I'm in chapter 1, I would like to create 2 links, one with a previous link that links me back to the home page that it was called from, and another link called the next link that I would like to click on it and go to chapter 2 when I'm done with chapter 1. How can I do that? Now let's run chapter 1 page, and here's chapter 1 page. It has the header, and I don't have any navigational links here, so I would like to create a previous link before chapter 1 title and a next link after chapter 1 title. How can I do that? So I'll go to the center of chapter 1 heading, and what I could do is precisely like what I did with or actually after this the chapter 1 title, I could just simply go on and add 2 links. One is called previous and the other one called next. So let's make a H2 header, and let's call this previous, and let's add a couple of spaces, blank, normal blank space, normal blank space, normal blank space, and a link called next. Now notice these aren't essentially my links yet. They are just simply text. If I run it, I will have a previous and a next. Now I would like to connect the previous link to the main file and then connect the next link to chapter 2 file. So for the previous link, all I need to do is to create a hyperlink, and the href will be essentially pointing towards the main file, which is main.htm. So I need to go out one level and point to main.htm file. Now if I run this from the previous, it was called home.htm. Sorry. So home.htm. Now let's run it. So from the previous, you go back to home, and then you can click on chapter 1, and then it takes you to chapter 1. Let's make the next for a reference to chapter 2. So go one folder up from ch1 folder, and then go to folder ch2, and then call chapter 2.htm. and close the tag. Now if we do this and we run our chapter, you'll see that chapter 1 is run. So you click on previous, you go to the main table of the book, and then you click on chapter 1, you go back to chapter 1, and then if you click on next, it will take you to chapter 2. Let's create the same for chapter 2. Open chapter 2 actually, just to make it faster, I would just copy and paste these information from chapter 1 to chapter 2 and just make the changes accordingly. So the ID is chapter 2.top and the title is chapter 2. The previous, now instead of going to home, I want to go one folder up, and then I want to go to ch1, and then I want to click on chapter 1.htm, and then instead of going to chapter 2, I would go one step up, go to chapter 3, and show chapter 3.html. Now if I run this chapter 3, my next would take me to chapter 1, my previous takes me to chapter 1, and my next takes me to chapter 3. Let's take this, and for chapter 3, let's create the same sequential information with a little bit of difference. Now for chapter 3, you want the title to be chapter 3. You want the previous to go to chapter 2 file, and for the next you want to stay on the same page because there's no chapter 4 here. And after we make all these changes, that's what happens. So your next wouldn't take you anywhere. You're still on chapter 3. Your previous takes you to chapter 2. The previous from chapter 2 takes you to chapter 1. The previous from chapter 1 takes you to the title of the book. And so this is how sequentially you could reference your files and your titles. Let's make the titles for chapter 2 and chapter 1 accordingly. Now another topic that I want to talk to you about is the topic of using images instead of text within your A tag links or hyperlinks. You can, instead of typing the text, you can use the image function, or essentially the image tag, and create the source of the image to make this the links to become visual instead of textual. So okay, let me show you how it works. Okay, I have previous and next button icons and a home icon for my next and previous links here, and in order to show you how it works, I'll modify the A tags for previous and next. Let's start with chapter 1 file, and in the previous, essentially I had a previous text. Now I want to replace it with an image. So I use the image and I use the source, and the destination for my source will be essentially the place that the image is located at. Now the image is located in images folder, and the name of the image is button-previous-icon.png. So let's do, because chapter 1 file is in ch1 folder, I need to go one folder up, and then I need to go to images folder, and then I need to point to button previous icon.png. Now let's see how it looks like. If I made everything right, it should show the image button. So for some reason it's not showing it correctly. PNG. That was the reason. Now you see that the chapter 1 is showing the previous icon. Now the size is pretty big. Let's resize it. I can resize that by using the height tag attribute, and let's make the height attribute at 100 pixels. Maybe a little smaller. Let's make it 75 pixels. And here is the previous icon. Let me close all these files again, and I would like to add another image for the next, and that image will be the next icon, or the next image, and I would replace the text here, and the name of the file is images but dash next dash icon. And as you see, I now have two icons, one for previous to go to chapter 1, to go to the main, and one for next to go to chapter 2. Let's replace these previous and next icons for chapter 2 and chapter 3 as well. So, but before doing that, let me show you another thing. Here I just used the images, and when I move my mouse over, it wouldn't tell me what these icons are responsible for. So I would like to have a hover or a kind of tooltip window when I move my mouse over, so I know where it goes. Now for the first image, that is the previous from chapter 1, I would add a title property to it or attribute to it, and I say back to the table of content. And for the next icon on chapter 1, I can create a title saying that go to chapter 2. Let's make it to chapter 2. Now let's run this. And so if I move my mouse over, the tooltip on the previous button tells me what it does back to table of contents, right? And then if I move my mouse over to the next icon, it will tell me to chapter 2, and it takes me to chapter 2. This way I'm interacting with my users. Now let's make this same for chapters 2 and 3. So the previous icon here wants to tell me back to chapter 1, and of course the reference wants to takes me to chapter 1. I'm just modifying because I copied and pasted here, and the title here wants to say to chapter 3, and it wants to take me to chapter 3. And for chapter 3, the reference from previous wants to go to chapter 2 folder, chapter 2. The title wants to read to chapter 2, and then the next icon wants to stay in chapter 3, and it should say chapter 3. Now let's run the entire document, and we are in the table of content or the main page. Again, to go over what happened here, I have a table of content, or basically a navigation bar here that links me to various parts within the same page of the table of content. And then I have internal links, for example chapter 1, and when I click it, it would take me to the chapter 1 page, and I could scroll down to read the contents of chapter 1. If I want to go to chapter 2, I can click on next here, and if I hover my mouse over this icon, it would tell me it's going to chapter 2. It takes me to chapter 2, and then if I stay or hover my mouse on icon for chapter 3 or for next, it would tell me that it is going to chapter 3. If I move my mouse over the previous button, it tells me from chapter 3, it tells me that it will take me to chapter 2, and same for chapter 1. And if I click on previous from chapter 1, it takes me back to the table of content. Okay? Now, one last thing for chapter 1, because it takes me to the table of content, I can simply, instead of the previous, add an image that is essentially about the home icon. So I could replace this image with a home icon. And my mistake, the
home icon's extension is a little different. It's not PNG, it's JPG. Okay, let's run the entire website. Let's go to chapter 1, and here's my home icon. If I click on it, it backs me to the home. If I click on next, it backs me to chapter 2, chapter 3, and chapter 2, chapter 1 home. And then I also showed you that you could reference within an extra file. You could reference to the chapter 1 HTML or the web page and reference a specific section or a specific part of that file, or you could essentially use external links from your website and click on external links. Now finally, in terms of closing up with our navigations, you could use alternatives resources basically to link to. You can use the mail to link to for href of an A tag to send emails. You could use FTP servers essentially in your href. You could use news groups, or you could even use a specific article or show a specific article within the news group using this alternative ways of using href within the A tag to create external references. Okay, now that we talked about the hyperlinks and I showed you how to create internal and external hyperlinks and hyperlinks that would access specific part or sections of your page, let's talk about a different topic, and that would be the topic that allows you to style your web pages. I'll talk about different types of styling, and I'll show you how we can use the style sheets to make our documents or web documents look professional and nice looking. And then I'll finish this lecture for this week, and next week I'll start showing you how you can use the style sheets in Visual Web Developer program that we have, and then I'll move on to using server controls and show you how you can use and implement server-side processes within your Visual Web Developer. Cascading style sheets, or as we call them CSS, have the potential to provide the web page designers such as us a very powerful tool and degree of control over the appearance of the websites that we create. We can specify the styles of our HTML pages essentially within the whole website, or just decide to make changes in terms of the formatting and the style of pages just to particular web pages, or to specific tags, even just one single tag within the entire website. Why do we use this? The power of CSS is the separation of the content from the presentation of your website, and this way you don't have to worry about making changes to an entire 1,000 page website when some need for some changes might arise. So this way you can reduce the amount of work that you need to do to create the changes to your websites, even huge websites, and also it would save a lot of space in terms of the HTML file sizes. For example, if I had a page like the previous page that I just showed you that we worked with for the book, I have a website with 4 pages, 3 pages for 3 chapters, and 1 page for the main page, which we called it home. And if I wanted the home page background color to be different from each chapter, and the chapter titles colors different from one page to another, or even entire website pages basically to look the same, and at some point in time we wanted to make changes to the entire website look, if I didn't use CSS or cascading style sheets, I would have to use and make formatting changes within every single tag in my document. However, as you notice, those changes add size to your files, and because you're copying this multiple times over multiple pages, your file sizes would grow. And using style sheets also save file sizes, because as we'll see later on today, we could put all this styling formattings within one single external style sheet, and then reference it or link to it within our pages. And with one page, we apply all the format changes throughout the website. So all these good and neat things about CSS come to a price, and there are drawbacks that CSS or cascading style sheet is suffering. The first problem with it is that the specifications for your cascading style sheets are pretty large and complex, and we can't eliminate this, because anyway we would have to use formatting, and there are lots of properties and attributes and values associated with this formatting specifications that you would have to use it. The second problem is that some browsers, actually none of the browsers, if you make a mistake in your style sheets, they wouldn't produce an error. They just simply ignore the formatting with errors in it, and therefore you might not realize that the styles that you're applying, although they're working in your machine, in your computers, they might not be working in other places. And that brings us also to another minor formatting differences that modern browsers have. So for example, I used a cascading style sheet file that I was applying to my website, and they would work in the Firefox browser, but they wouldn't work in Internet Explorer. So that brings us to different types of CSS. There are 3 specifications for CSS, namely CSS1, CSS2, and CSS2 with revision 1. And if you need to test your browser, you can go to the website that, on the w3.org or Web Consortium website, and it has test tools that you could test your browser to see if it supports a specific version of the CSS. And we will talk about that website at the end of this chapter, which brings us to the reading materials that we would have to study, or you could use it as a reference when you're developing your CSS files. Cascading style sheets essentially are really good because they are essentially cascading different types of styles that we apply. There are 4 different levels that these styles can be applied to your web documents, and you can use the style attributes within one single element to apply its own style, or you can apply the style element in a global style tag within the head element of your page, and apply the styles to the entire page. Or you could use external style sheet files and link them in the head element of your pages to apply an external style sheet over the entire website or the pages that you want these styles to be applied, instead of having to copy and paste all of the style sheet within the head element of all of the pages that you want to be applied. And some web browsers also allow the users to apply their own style sheets in the browser. So as you see, all these levels basically create conflicts. How can we go about and solve these conflicting problems? That's the prioritization of your styles. So as I said, there are different levels. The lowest level of styling is the inline styling that you apply to one single element, and that has the highest priority. Basically, whatever styles you apply, if you want one single tag, for example, to have a different style, you can simply use the style attribute of that tag, and it overrides all of the other styles that are cascaded on it over an embedded style or an external style. And then the embedded styles which are applied to the page override the external styles, and the external styles also have the lowest types of priority. You can apply multiple style files and link them within an external style element, and I'll show you how you can apply external style elements to them, and simply the ones that come first override the rest of the style sheet files. So the first type of style sheet, as I mentioned in the last slide, is called an inline style, and the inline styles essentially use the style attribute of the element, and you can simply put the property and the value of that property within a property : value format. And if you want to have multiple properties, for example, the font size, the color of the font, and so on, you could cascade them, or you could put them one after another and separate them with a semicolon. And here's an example of the inline style that you can see. The second type of style sheets or styling is called embedded styling, and you can use the style tag in the head element. So as you saw in the previous example, I used style attribute of the element itself. Now I can simply use a tag which is called the style tag, and it has style and /styles in brackets for its tags, and I'll put that in my head element, and then I could use the HTML tags without the brackets, and I would put the color properties values with the specific formatting that I'm showing here within curly braces, and it would apply those styles. If I need to apply even multiple formattings, I can just simply cascade them and separate them by semicolons within the curly brackets. Just one thing that you need to remember is that do not use brackets within the style tag or within the style element. Just use the name of the tag without its brackets. You use the brackets to create elements in your body of the HTML file, but when you're referencing them as styles, you do not use the tags. And the third type of styling is an external style sheet, and the external style sheet is simply similar to the embedded style sheet. The difference is that for this external style sheet, you create a file with an extension CSS, and within that file you put all the styling formatting that you created without the style tag. So all you need to do is just to simply put, as you see here, just the H1 curly braces color : magenta, and I put this in my CSS file, and I do not include the style tags within that file. How can I use it in my HTML document? Within the head of the document, all I need to do is to use the link tag, which is pretty much like the A tag, the anchor tag, and it looks for a link that the current web page will be using, and the attributes that it has is that its H reference is my file.css, which is my style sheet file. Its relation is style sheet. That determines that when the browser is processing, it looks for file.css, and whatever information within that file.css has, it has to be applied as a style sheet for this current page. And the type of the styling is basically text /CSS. The power of style sheets is basically the fact that they can redefine HTML elements and HTML tags. So by that I mean when you're using and applying a style sheet, for example, to a P tag, it would apply this formatting throughout the entire web page whenever you use the P element. So when you use the, for example, a style sheet to define the color of the text that is applied within the P tag, and you use it as an embedded style sheet, and whenever you use this P element in your documents, as I will show you in a short while, the color of all those texts would turn into purple. This is useful when we are using, or basically we are applying it as constructive use for element redefinition. For example, if I want all of my my text within the paragraphs of my web page to basically have a little margin, or be a little bit have a little edge from this edge, a little distance from the edge of the screen, I could apply this distance to my P tags, and this would apply it to the entire page. So I won't have to worry about the distance of my text from the edge of the screen whenever I'm creating the text or I'm typing the text. As long as I put it in a P tag, it would automatically be away from the edge of the screen. But doing something like making the color of the page purple or the text purple, it would apply to the entire page, and that might not be desirable. And as I will show you a little later, it will also be inherited. So whatever extra formatting I'll apply in line within my text, it would not be applied in terms of colors and things like that. So we would have to be careful when we are using this. However, how could I do this when I want to apply certain changes to a certain sets of elements in my web page and not apply it to the entire page? For example, if I have a couple of paragraphs that I want them to be purple and I don't want to apply this formatting every single time I want to use it, how can I do this or use the power of the cascading style sheets to keep the appearance of all of the paragraphs the way that I want them to be first, but apply extra appearance or extra formatting to specific elements? And that is the use of classes. By assigning classes, we would basically automatically balance the power between the sweeping power of the CSS and also the limited power of inline formatting. And these classes basically avoid the sweeping changes that are applied to your formatting by cascading style sheets. There are two steps to assign classes. Remember when I said that I want a couple of paragraphs to be purple? The first step is to define the class in an embedded or an external style sheet. So what you would do is that in your embedded or external style sheet, basically in your external style sheet file, or within the style tag of the head element for embedded style sheets, you put a period, and then you type the name of the class, and then in the curly braces, you type the property value, property value, property value formats. And if you have multiple, again, you can separate them by semicolon. And the second step is to use the class attribute of the element and assign the class name that you defined in your cascading style sheets to it. So for example, if I wanted a couple of purple paragraphs within my text document, instead of designing in my external style sheet, defining the p tag to have the color purple for the entire p tags in my paragraphs, in my pages, I just create a purple pair class which has the color of purple, and then when I create a p tag or a p element, if I want it to be appearing purple, I assign a class to it, and the class will be the purple pair that I defined in my cascading style sheets up here. And then the paragraphs that are within that element will turn purple. There's another use for defining specific tags essentially within your paragraphs and formatting them within your external style sheets, and that is the use of ID selectors. And by the way, all the classes and the tags that you format in cascading style sheets that are called selectors. There are ID selectors essentially that you could use in your cascading style sheets. Let's say that you have a paragraph, and that paragraph has a specific ID. And if you want that only single paragraph to be read, for example, you can use the ID of this paragraph or any element and assign the formatting styles to that ID within your cascading style sheet, and it would apply it automatically to the ID. So you won't have to define classes. This way, there's a drawback about this kind of formatting, and that is essentially not using the power of CSS. We use the CSS to avoid inline formatting of every single particular element or tag by defining a format for the entire tag or entire class of tags. But this way, we're just defining formatting for just one single ID. And remember, IDs cannot be duplicated. An entire web page can only contain one single ID for a particular element. You can't duplicate it for multiple elements. So, and the way to use it is to first give the ID to your element, and then use a hash sign in your cascading style sheets, and use the ID name that you created and apply the formatting to it. So why is it useful? Why do I sometimes want to use this cascading style sheets for just one single ID? That is when, for example, you have a header and you have a footer, or you have menus and things like that, and you want to specify how they should be formatted on every page. And in this way, you just simply create unique IDs for these tags and for these elements, like your header, your footer, and your menu, and then you style them, or you format them, their appearance in your cascading style sheets. For example, you want your menu items to change color when you hover your mouse over them, and you want only those particular menu items to change color, or to change to a specific color, not in the entire page or the entire paragraphs when you hover your mouse over them, or even a subclass of paragraphs. So you create unique IDs for the menu items, for example, and then you simply click on them. You simply style them in the cascading style sheet, external or embedded, and that would apply to the entire pages. So you remember when I was talking about constructive use of cascading style sheets, and that sometimes when you define something or some formatting, you want to make sure that the extra formatting or inline formatting throughout tags like boldface or italic face would not basically be overruled by your style sheets. That was the problem of inheritance that I was talking about. If you create one element that is inside or nested inside another element, and the parent element has a cascading property set, then the child element automatically takes the same setting of the parent. So, for example, if you create the heading that is colored red, and then you use the heading, and within the heading you use the, for example, italicized element, it would not automatically apply the italicized element to the or create a different color to it, and the entire element would look green. What if you wanted, for example, for your italicized to be blue? You can nest these styles, essentially, as you can see here, to override the inheritance. So in the case that I was just explaining, the italic size, the italic tag or the I tag was within the edge tag, and I want the I tag text to also appear blue. So I create the color red for the H1, and it applies color red to any text that I create in the H1 element. And then I create a nested style, and I say that if there is an element that is an H1 and it's italic, make the color blue. So when I'm typing my text, and I'll show you in a little while how it works, if I'm typing my text and I say I create the H1 element, and then within the H1 element I type a text, and within that I create an italic element, what would happen is that the entire text would be rendered red. The I tag, because it's now nested and is defined in cascading style sheet as blue, it would get assigned a blue color. There are other interesting stuff that we could do with cascading style sheets that before we would have to use JavaScripts to do. For example, menus. Most people use JavaScript to create menus, but with cascading style sheets you can easily create menus, and I'll just show you an example of this in my own website. And the entire menu has been created in cascading style sheets. And here's my web page, and as you see to the left of my web page I have a menu that when I move my mouse over, the color of text and the elements within the text change. The header of this page is entirely defined in cascading style sheets. The body of my pages are also defined in cascading style sheets. And even in this page I have extra information such as a footer down here, and that's also defined as a cascading style sheet. Now, if you want to learn more about cascading style sheets, chapter 12 of the Creating Websites, 3rd edition, that was one of the recommended books, have a complete list of all the properties and attributes within your cascading style sheets that you could use. And also you can go to w3.org/tr/rec-css1. This is essentially the CSS1 specifications of cascading style sheet properties and attributes, and you can use that. I never had remembered or memorized these these properties. There are so many of them. So whenever I want to make some changes and use some formattings, I just go on a number of online sites, including this w3.org website, and consult with their references about these properties and the style sheets. And I recommend you do the same. And it would be another part of extra reading materials of this week that you would be studying as a part of learning materials about this class. Okay, class.